Hello, everybody. My name is Sjursen. I'm a professor emeritus at the New York University Tandon School of Engineering. And since I've retired, I've been working in Asia, in both China and India. And currently, I'm a visiting professor at the Beihang University School of General Engineering and visiting scholar at the East China University of Science and Technology as well. So today I just want to give a little bit of a preview of what I will be talking about in our webinar as we get together in September to talk about engineering ethics. What should engineering ethics include? What approach should be taken? What would some of the pedagogical issues be, and so on. I'm going to focus on why it's important and what I think the content ought to be, and I'm framing my remarks on the somewhat provocative notion that engineering is applied ethics. So that's what I'm going to do to try to bring out what I think are some of the crucial issues that are before us as we try to make sure that engineering is very appropriately involved in public decisions and public welfare and taking into account the grand challenges that are facing engineering as well as all of us on the fragile globe we live in today. So let me just give a little background for why I'm choosing this approach. As I'm sure you've all heard that there's a divide between science or science and technology, or science, technology, and engineering, or STEM, science, technology, education, mathematics, between this suite of disciplines and skills that are obviously vital and crucial, and where we've been challenged most places in the world to try to improve education in those areas in order to produce the abundance of properly trained and skilled and committed workers that we need to face the future. But anyway, a divide or sort of a barrier between that group of skills and the humanities, or perhaps the humanities and the social sciences, or perhaps what we might call the liberal arts. Another way that people think about this is to talk about the difference between soft skills and hard skills. And perhaps the most fundamental way of talking about it, and the way that has persisted throughout history, is between the practical life and the reflective life, or the theoretical approach to things and the kind of applied approach to things. And this is an ancient debate, and in ancient times in Greece and also, however, in the early formative documents of Chinese and Indian civilizations, there's a debate between a life of action and a life of contemplation. And that debate has really sort of drawn us apart and I think created some pseudo problems. A recent article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, which is based on a book that's come out in the last few months. I have the title there, the cover. This article, based on that book, argues that education, the primary function or purpose of education, ought to be to unite the humanities, science, and engineering. And I think that that enterprise focuses very much on the issue of ethics, and it's ethics that can bring us together. C.P. Snow, you see pictured there, talked about the two cultures and the way in which on his university faculty and students and so on in the humanities hardly had anything to do with the people in the sciences and technology, and vice versa. And when they did meet, they didn't understand each other, they didn't know much about each other's disciplines, and there was a kind of mutual disdain. I think engineering ethics is the way to overcome this. So I'm going to try to create a few challenges. I want us to reflect on and ultimately understand why ethics cannot be separated from engineering best practices. I want us to recognize that ethics actually is the central concern of human action throughout history, and because engineering is kind of the implementation of human action, ethics ought to be the central concern of engineering as well. We need to talk about how to formulate ethics learning objectives within technical design and engineering courses, and we should understand something about assessment, and particularly, I would say, why it's important not to try to grade people in the same way on ethics as to work on formative assessment techniques. So these are the topics I would bring up in the webinar. What is engineering ethics? How is it different from other forms of ethics or branches of ethics or scope of ethics? Is ethics something actually a kind of knowledge that goes beyond opinion or preference? If so, what is the basis of that knowledge? Secondly, or next, is ethics merely an expression of Western or modern thinking? And I'm going to say definitely not. I'm going to give an example about some misunderstanding between ethicists and scientists in the West versus Chinese, and argue that this is a mistake, and then try to, through all of these things, bring out the idea that ethics really is inseparable from engineering, and we can say engineering is applied ethics. The main question of ethics is, how do we live well? And the sort of rogues gallery up here shows a number of prominent thinkers who have, from numerous perspectives, argued about how it is that we build the best kind of life that we can for ourselves and others. That's what ethics is, and that ought to be what engineers are doing. What kind of knowledge is it? Lately, with neuroscience and advanced studies in evolutionary biology, there's a lot of thought that our ethical impulses are really hardwired in us. It's not a personal opinion, it's not culturally biased, it is universal. I'd like to consider that. Maybe have a chance to talk about this controversy. You can see the Scream headlines from the New York Times from 2015. I want to say that, we don't fall into separate camps, Chinese versus Westerners, any more than we should fall into separate camps, humanists versus scientists and engineers. A lot of the things that engineers are doing these days automatically raises ethical questions. Think about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Engineers, if you pay attention to these, need to be involved in every one of these. But of course, these are, emphatically expressions of ethical and social and humanitarian concern. But engineers need to be at the center. China's Belt and Road Initiative, in a major, world's largest probably ever, global infrastructure project, is filled with ethical dilemmas and questions. And of course, the National Academy of Engineers' grand challenges for engineering raise ethical issues at every turn. I like to define engineering in terms of the CDIO paradigm: conceive, design, implement, operate. If you think about those different dimensions, it's clear that engineering raises at each level and at each stage of design and practice and maintenance ethical questions. So these are the kinds of issues that I want to discuss together with you and my colleagues in the webinar. So I'm looking forward to it. If you want to contact me before or after the webinar, here's my email address, and you can also look at my website, where I have some discussion of engineering ethics that may help you understand where I'm coming from. So see you then. Thank you, and looking forward to this.